Dr. Nario. Dr. Nario is with Biointegrative Health Center. Biointegrative Health Center is a clinic in Reno, Nevada. I'm there every Thursday getting some type of a drip. So you can check them out online, all the things they do, all the things they treat. And I suggest that just for fun, go check the website out online. So welcome, doctor.
Hi, Steve. Pleasure being here again.
Okay, so I want to talk about vitamin D. And so I'll just pass this over to you in a minute, but vitamin D, there's vitamin D3, vitamin D2, um, and I want to get to kind of talking about, is this a hormone? Is it not? But first, tell us, what is vitamin D? Is there a three and a two? What's the difference? So what's vitamin D?
Well, Steve, vitamin D is something that, again, winter has passed, there's no sun, everybody's missing a good tan from the sun. And vitamin D is always related to what we call the rise of endorphins. And these are the feel-good hormones for the reason that it's always attached to sunlight and it makes us happy. And always remember, vitamin D is the free B vitamin because it's activated by the sun. And that's always, you don't pay your rent for the sun, you don't purchase the sun. And the thing here is, D is created in the skin and activated by sunlight into a beneficial wonder drug. It's the most inexpensive among the vitamins and so many beneficial effects, making it so popular, almost putting D in almost everyone's supplement list. So shame on you if you don't have this one. But recently, more famous for COVID, because close to almost 30 or so studies shown optimal blood levels of 25 OH vitamin D on blood testing actually lowers the COVID-19 risks and also reduces infection, severe diseases, and risk of dying. And the research for this one is very overwhelming.
Okay, so I mean, you kind of brought that up. So, but vitamin D, I mean, let's forget about the past um, pandemic or whatever. Isn't this good for all kinds of potential ailments, viruses? I mean, because I mean, what could be the next sickness or whatever? I mean,
Uh,
vitamin D is shown to be effective against that, but it's effective for almost every kind of virus or ailment. Am I right?
yeah, and again, as I mentioned to you, the benefits of vitamin D is so overwhelming that what immune system, we use it in cancer patients. We use it also for people who has depression, because as we all know, that's also related for you not getting sunlight. And for bone health, anybody who has osteoporosis or osteopenia, vitamin D is a must. And hormone regulation, vitamin D is always being used. I mean, there's not a thing that I can tell you that vitamin D is useless or not part of a big important cycle in the system.
Right. So I guess what you're saying, it's not like, okay, we don't have to wear masks anymore. We don't need vitamin D. Yeah, you do. Right?
Yeah.
It's still important.
Uh-huh.
So now another thing that I hear a lot of people talking about is some people say, well, vitamin D is not really a vitamin, it's a hormone. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, if it's your body's making it and sunlight stimulates it, so vitamin D is known as a fat soluble vitamin. So, why do so many physicians and healthcare practitioners say it's really a hormone? Please explain that.
All right. So the biggest debate, chicken or the egg or a chicken, who came first, almost the same concept. The thing here is nobody is wrong. It's a fat soluble vitamin, and as that's why it's best taken with meals, so it can be better absorbed and faster absorbed. It is also a hormone, so it can be either both for the reason that it is naturally produced by the body and it deposits on our skin as cholesterol. And while it's laying there, that's when where the sun comes in and activates the cholesterol, which is the vitamin D cholesterol on our skin, to turn it into actual vitamin D because it goes to the liver, goes to our kidneys. It's a whole metabolic process. But that's why it's a hormone and also a vitamin. But now let's go back to your question about now how intricate can we talk about this as a vitamin? Because now we talk about this as a supplement. So that's when it becomes a vitamin when you take it in. And there are two types that which you actually just mentioned, which is D2 and D3. The difference would be is you always find D2 most of the time with prescription vitamin Ds. And the sources are the ones that makes a bigger difference here. D2 comes from yeast sources, and D3 comes from plants and animals such as sheep's wool. And again, you would hear that the D3 commercial brand always combined with K2 for the reason that it works in synergy in relation to making sure that the calcium that's getting absorbed by vitamin D is going into the bones and not affecting the arteries, which are getting harder if these calcium that we absorb is not getting controlled or diverted properly.
Okay, so I have another question because the vitamin bag the vitamin bag, which I feel like is kind of special for me, that I get at the clinic, biointegrative, I get that vitamin bag a lot, and I get it a lot of times in a row, and it's got everything in it. It's got all the vitamins and minerals. It's got magnesium. It's got zinc. Um, and it's got, I don't know, 20 amino acids in it, right?
Uh-huh.
And 30,000 milligrams of vitamin C and tons of all the B vitamins are all in this one bag that I get. But there's one thing that's not in it. That's vitamin D. Why is that?
Well, Steve, even with the smorgasbord of goodies that you get in a vitamin bag, you're still missing some essentials in there. So why is that? Because vitamin D is what we call a fat soluble vitamin. And the thing here is when you have a fat soluble vitamin, it has a different entryway towards our body. The ones that you just mentioned in a bag, these are all majority of them are what we call water soluble, meaning they can actually free flow from a bag to your veins and into your body safely. When you talk about putting a fat soluble vitamin through your veins, there is now an entity or a pathology called fat embolism. So when you inject that uh, fat substance, now it can turn into what we call an embolus uh, and travel to your lungs, of course, making you giving you a hard time breathing, because it cannot be digested that way. That's why we prefer it to be injected for the reason of depot effect. So meaning it's almost like testosterone, for example. As you can see, I'm sure you know that it's very hard to aspirate. It's very thick because it's also the same thing. It's fat based. So that's why what we do is we put it intramuscularly. So intramuscularly, it now is getting distributed slowly through your body. That's why when we give vitamin D injections, we actually tell patients not to take vitamin D orally for a few days because you're already putting money in the bank and that's distributing your supply all throughout the days and the weeks ahead. And if you add more orally in there, then things gets into what we call hopefully not overdosing, but too much for the system.
Okay, so you say, does that mean there's no vitamin A in the bag that I get?
No, definitely not. Because these are you have to remember the fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, K. Those are
Okay.
definitely not a given through.
Okay. So
Uh,
what's not in the bag I get is any four of the fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, K. Okay.
yes.
God, I
Well,
was just curious. I was just
uh,
curious about that.
let's here's also a special case for you. There are ways in how to infuse such fat soluble vitamins. So there are forms that are infusable, meaning they modify that to make it into also water soluble, and but still having the properties of fat solubility. But it cannot be mixed with other IVs. It has to
So
be on
you
its own.
so you take it one at a time.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the injection of these fat soluble vitamins would be an easy way to go.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so let's close it off with this. And you kind of touched on this, and I kind of did too, about hey, it's not just for this or not just for that. It's for a whole bunch of stuff. So regulating their hormones to keep you sick from all kinds of things. So, just close us out with what's the significance of vitamin D? Just kind of if there's anything you can add to that about why vitamin D is significant, why it's important, why we need it, so on.
Right. Well, that's a good question, Steve, because why is it significant? Because 47%, 40, yeah, 45 to 47% of the US population is deficient in vitamin D. If I tell
Hmm.
you that 10 patients that I see in terms of blood testing, I actually will see 7 to 8 out of 10 that are vitamin D deficient. And being in North
Wow.
America, it's a huge risk factor where majority of the states are in a higher latitude, winter months, sun rays landing on angles that does not give us the proper exposure to vitamin D. So that's why we always need supplementation, especially being indoors more during the winter, indoor jobs that we have. We all like playing with the computers nowadays, no more interaction outside COVID lockdowns, wearing clothes that covers our skin from top to bottom, the use of sunscreen, smog covered cities, and even inflammatory states such as arthritis. We use up a lot of vitamin D with that. Being overweight and obese, having all those fat cells absorb the vitamin D rather than spreading it out to the system, it gets locked in those fat cells. And again, as we age, this creation of vitamin D just decreases. And supplements, again, in the market, we have to be careful, are poorly regulated. Some of them, as they claim, has less amounts of vitamin D. That's why we always get sources that are very reliable. And here's one thing, the common question that I get from patients. Oh, I just go out and do hiking and expose myself to the sun. I'll get free vitamin D. I probably wouldn't do that, especially if you're blonde, white, pale skinned, blue eyes. The risk of skin cancer is definitely not worth it. If there are supplements that you can take to give yourself vitamin D, I'd rather do that instead. And put your sunscreen if you are going to do that.
Sure. If you're going to do it that way, you're probably looking at a 15-minute hike, which most
Right.
people, a 15-minute hike would be healthy. Well, most people don't do 15-minute hikes. So that's the problem with it. It's
True.
overexposure to sunlight, obviously.
That is true.
All right. Well, we thank you, Dr. Nario. Dr. Nario's in Reno, Biointegrative Health Center. Again, you can check them out online. Thanks for being with us, Doctor.
Thanks, Steve, for having me today. And again, thank you for the time. I hope our patients. That's one of the bigger um, topics that I always get from patients, and I hope I enlightened you with this. And as we all know, knowledge is power. And thank you for letting me provide you with edge in longevity and health maintenance, which I call the biological edge or the bio edge.